Hello again. So now let's start create our first virtual machine. So to create your virtual machine, just go and click create and register a virtual machine. So here, as you will see, select creation type, and here we have three types to create our virtual machine. The first one is create a new virtual machine. You can see the meaning of this option. Then we have deploy a virtual machine from a OVF or a OVA. OVF and OVA is the extension or the type of some file that is a virtual machine. Save it as a file so we can migrate it from host to another host. For example, if you have a virtual machine that exists on a very old host and you want to move it inside this host, and you don't have the technique of moving it through the network, you export this virtual machine as a OVF or a OVA file and put it in the USB driver or in a DVD, and then paste it in this host, and through this option you can upload this virtual machine to the host ESXi1. So this is, we don't use it right now because we are creating a new data center, so we don't have any OVF or OVA. Sometimes you can download an OVF of a virtual machine already prepared and save it in the VMware, for example, from the VMware website to do some task with it. Then we have register an existing virtual machine that we have. That means we already have virtual machine and we need just to register it in our host. So the first option that we're going to use, and we click next. Then he asks us to give a name to this virtual machine. This is the step that you need to customize at what you need. So for example, let's just choose an example of installing, for example, a Windows. For example, we want to install a Windows Server 2016, for example, and we want to create as an Active Directory or a domain controller or anything that you want in your company. So let's give it a name, for example, Windows 2016, for example, and give it, for example, domain controller or Active Directory. So you, the one who need to choose a name that when you see that name, you know this machine is for what. So here you give it a name. Then an important thing is the compatibility. This is an important step to choose the compatibility of this virtual machine. So here you see this virtual machine will be compatible with the ESXi 6.5, or you can choose to the version 6 or 5.5, 5.1 and 5 and 4, etc. Why we need to choose the compatibility mode of this virtual machine? This is back to your data center. If you already have some host with some old ESXi version, for example, you have a host with ESXi 5.5, and you know that in the future maybe you want to migrate this virtual machine that's called Win 2016 Active Directory to the other host that use the ESXi 5.5. So if you know that one day in the future you will need to move this virtual machine from this host ESXi1 to the host that use an ESXi 5.5, you need to choose the compatibility mode with the ESXi 5.5. If you don't choose it, if you left it as 6.5, and when you migrate this virtual machine to the other host, this virtual machine will not going to work on the new host that use the ESXi 5.5. So this is an important step that you need to care about it when you want to create a virtual machine in a compatibility mode. As our lab is new, we don't have any other hosts, and this is the first host that we create, so we're going always to use the latest version. Of course, if you use one of those old version, there are some features that will lost it, you can't use it in this virtual machine. Also the support RAM, which will be less, you can check the VMware website to see how much ESXi 6.5 virtual machine support in the RAM and in the hard driver, and how much for the 5.5, etc. The new one support more than enough RAM and hard driver. The old one support less RAM and less hard driver. But in all the times you will find that the support RAM is always more than enough for any virtual machine that you can create in your data center. So this is not a big problem, but just a difference between the version, and just an example of the feature that you will lose when you use some old version of the ESXi. So let's keep it 6.5. Then we select the OS family. We choose between Linux, Mac OS, Windows. For example, if you use the hypervisor of Microsoft, you can only install the Microsoft operating system. You don't have the ability to install the Mac OS or the Linux or some other operating system. But this is a good feature of the VMware, that you can install any operating system like Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. In my lab, I only going to use Windows because Windows is the more professional operating system. Then we select the OS. Why we need to select the OS? That will help us to customize the hard driver at the minimum, as we do when we install the ESXi in a virtual machine through the VM workstation. So let's just give it an example. For example, server 2016. We search for it. Here is it, server 2016, and we finish. We click next.